Scott Bauer standing by. He's joining us. He's the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. Scott, happy Monday. Thanks for starting your week with us here on the TD Ameritrade Network. A lot of optimism with the Phase 1 U.S.-China trade deal. What comes next?
You know, I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, the path is set for whatever the finality of Phase 1 is, which as details keep coming out, it seems to be maybe less and less and less of what people thought it was going to be or what was in the media. And now, you know, maybe some rhetoric towards what may be Phase 2. But, you know, Ben, outside of some headlines here, there still is nothing really concrete yet.
Yeah. Scott, you know, it seems to have taken away some of the negatives, but I guess I'm wondering how positive is it really if we can't get the economic data back to where we want to see it? I mean, we're still in a situation where inflation continues to be below levels that we want to see. Wages, for the most part, aren't seeing the increases at the rate that we would like to see. I mean, ultimately, yes, that's now in the rear view, but in terms of the focal point, we're going to be still dialed in on the eco data.
No doubt about it. I totally agree with that. You know, where is manufacturing going from here? And, you know, to me, I want to see these retail holiday sales, and I want to see what the consumer has done, because the consumer really has just been the underpinning to this economy for the entire year. And I want to see that they've still been strong through the holiday season. So the next few weeks are going to be just unbelievably important from my perspective, the eco data that you mentioned.
Scott, what does all this mean for the U.S. dollar? We're seeing it come off a bit. Some are saying that's the risk-off sentiment that's coming out of that flight to quality coming out of the U.S. dollar. I'm seeing a lot of foreign currencies that had been trading lower that seem to be lifting the dollar that are now reversing that trend. For example, the Canadian dollar, the British pound, two perfect examples. What should we expect for the greenback in the next couple weeks into the end of the year?
Yeah, I think we're going to see just a bit of pressure like we're seeing this morning here. But listen, ultimately the dollar is still the go-to, and I believe going into 2020 it's going to maintain its strength. But like you said, we are seeing other currencies rally. We're seeing the pound is what, 134 this morning, traded up over 135 I believe on Friday, the highest it's been in quite a while, and other currencies against, you know, the dollar as well. So, you know, some short-term pressure here, but I think that the dollar is still going to be the place to be, especially in the first quarter of 2020.
Scott, let's talk a little bit about what this could mean for the Fed. Probably not going to necessarily change their stance. We were hearing about how there's really no expectations for a rate change until 2021. But how about some of the international agencies like the IFO, the EIA, the IEA, and some of these agencies that have been revising growth forecasts lower? I actually heard, I think it was over the weekend, UBS came out. They're actually expecting growth to be higher now. I'd imagine we could see some shifts in sentiment now that this U.S.-China trade Phase 1 deal is actually in the works.
You know, I think you have to look at some of these projections now, almost like when big corporations come out with earnings guidance. And we've seen earnings guidance, you know, just lowered so much. Well, I think that's some of the expectations that we're seeing out of EIA and IEA and, you know, some of these other global growth components here. And these expectations have been lowered so much now that, you know, there could be some bottom picking here, and any sort of beat is going to be really positive. In fact, you know, we're getting some numbers out of China also that are not great, but much better than expected in terms of growth. So there is a little bit of stir out there, I would say, saying that, you know what, maybe we've hit rock bottom globally.
Yeah, let's talk about eco data. We mentioned how we should be dialed in on it this week. We actually just had a number released this morning. We had the Empire State Manufacturing Survey. If we could pull that up to have a look, the number, as we take a look here again at the Empire State Manufacturing Survey, it came in at 5.3, above the estimate 4.0, Scott, above prior of 2.9. This is about what we want to see in terms of positive momentum, strong economic data. What are you going to be dialed in on this week? I noticed industrial production, a lot of housing data, a couple Fed speakers, and GDP. Where should the focal point be, Scott?
Yeah, I want to look towards GDP numbers, you know, later in the week, and you touched on inflation earlier in the week, you know, just a couple minutes ago. I want to see what the Fed has to say, what those numbers have to say. But again, Ben, I think for me at this point now, what's left going into the end of the year here, I really want to see how the consumer is holding up
Noted.
through the whole tariff debacle, and most importantly, how are they spending money this holiday season?
Noted. Yeah, we'll get a little bit of information in terms of the personal income and spending as well later on in the week. Scott, one more question. With trade, U.S.-China trade, the focal point last week, everybody kind of lost sight of the fact that we are potentially very close to inking a deal. The USMCA, we saw the Canadian dollar, I mentioned that, get a lift last week, the British pound as well, but the peso's also getting a lift, again, kind of adding to some of the woes that the greenback's been dealing with.
Listen, this is a major, major breakthrough. This is a major deal here, and if it weren't for all the headlines of U.S. and China, this would be front and center. So this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's see if it actually gets inked. It looks like it will. I don't see why it wouldn't. But like you said, it's really given a lift to the Canadian dollar, to the pound as well, and the peso, which is very little talked about.
Yeah, peso, pound. Euro currency, Canadian dollar, New Zealand dollar, Aussie dollar. I mean, the list goes on.
Yep.
In terms of strength in foreign currencies relative to the U.S. dollar. Scott, thanks for joining us here on a Monday. Really appreciate you starting the week with us here on the TD Ameritrade Network. Traders at Scott Bauer. He's the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy.